Going on?
How about you?
Hey, Starla. I think you're muted.
Can you hear us now, Mike?
Sure do.
Mike, can you hear us?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, Susan Rodriguez McDowell.
Hello.
How's your trip?
So far so good.
Good.
So it looks like everybody's not there, huh?
Yes.
Wow. All right, well, in that case, we will wait.
Does she have the documents? She
I
does.
do.
Okay.
Thank you.
Always thinking. Always looking out.
I know Councilwoman Molina says she was somewhere close. I just got off the phone with her. Hey,
Hey,
I was, oh, look, you got some sun.
I think I did walking around that campus.
Wow.
That's so funny. I was talking to someone and I was looking there. I was
Wow,
like, I
you're
got sun
you
yesterday. I tan like that.
think?
Susan,
Yes.
you need to tour. She needs to tour that facility.
Yeah,
She needs to
I would
go.
love for her to be in that room.
Me too. Were you thinking the same
I
thing?
was.
Yes. We'll talk
I
later.
just say it.
I need to hear more about this.
You do definitely need to.
Might be in a room with a billionaire.
Yeah.
Like, I think he's richer than Trump.
Oh, by far.
Because Trump is like a bunch of bull.
He's not. We're waiting. Hey, SRM, I'm sorry. We're waiting on Councilwoman Molina. She's coming.
Okay, great.
Good to hear your voice.
Yeah, good to see you guys, even though you're teeny tiny on my screen.
And actually, I think what we could do is, Starla, if you don't mind, maybe we can just get started and we just change the agenda up and do the legislative update so that we can just get the meeting moving. Is that okay? All right. So good afternoon, everybody. I want to call together the Intergovernmental Affairs Committee meeting for April 6th. Thank you, everybody, for joining. I chair this committee. My name is Mark Jarrell, and I'll ask my colleagues to introduce themselves, starting with Commissioner Meyer.
Good afternoon. I'm Laura Meyer and I represent District 5.
Commissioner Rodriguez McDowell.
Good afternoon, I'm Susan Rodriguez McDowell, and I'm elected by the people of District 6.
Thank you. And she is joining us remotely. And then Starla, do you mind introducing staff, please, and everybody in the room?
Not at all. Thank you very much, Commissioner Jarrell. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Starla Tanner, Intergovernmental Affairs Manager. We'll have our Deputy County Manager, Deputy County Manager and Chief of Staff introduce himself, and then our other Deputy County Manager here, and then we'll go around the room to staff. Oh, and then we'll also go back on screen because we do have one of our contract lobbyists on as well.
Great.
Good afternoon, Derek Ramos, Deputy County Manager and Chief of Staff.
And good afternoon, Leslie Johnson, Deputy County Manager.
Her community relations manager.
Thank you. Fantastic. And
Then we have
online.
Lorianne.
Afternoon, Lorianne Harris, one of the contract lobbyists for Mecklenburg County.
Hi, Lorianne. Thank you so much for being here. So today's agenda is light, but it's substantive. And we all know that Starla Tanner is always working hard to keep us updated on what's happening and moving legislation forward, whether it's state level or federal level. And so we are going to start out with an update from the items that she's tracking, and then we're going to follow up with the conversation about Eastland. And I want to just make sure that we're clear. When I talk about this conversation from Eastland, I really wanted to have a perspective from the community perspective and leverage our Councilwoman Marjorie Molina, who'll join us, so that she can provide us a little bit insight into what the community is saying, what their sort of expectations that have been set and any additional updates that she thinks would be helpful for us as a committee to understand. So that was the purpose of her being here. And so, but at this point, we'll just turn it over to Starla.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. And I know that council also, I think, has a budget meeting. So I know when Ms. Molina comes in, she may need to come in quickly, and I'll just stop and go straight.
That
through
sounds-
So
that
I
sounds
know they
right.
had a bit of a
Thank you.
conflict this afternoon. Well, thank you for an opportunity to provide an update. It is, I think, right after I printed and sent out the PowerPoint with the sheet, it was outdated and more bills have been introduced.
Imagine that.
Yeah, I think Commissioner Meyer said on skates, or someone did. I was joking with Rebecca about cloning myself. I even brought exhibits to show. This tops my ARPA regulations I used to carry around. This is the House budget. So it's been an active time. And so today is really just a brief overview, just kind of a check-in. There's so many more bills that are being introduced, more introduced, of course, than can be heard by committee. Now, at the end, I'll talk a little bit about the timeline and why that's the case. So just, again, just some overall highlights, really trying to share some good news too on things that have happened. I think we can use some good news on ways that our agenda is moving. Before I start with actually providing the overview, I want to bring to your attention some of the handouts that you have. During our consideration of creating or approving our legislative agenda, there was a request from the board, from the committee members, to create an alignment document that looks at our stakeholders and their agendas as well. So you have two in front of you. One is an alignment document with the city, county, and towns, and then another one shows stakeholder organizations such as Central Linus. I know that was one very specific stakeholder. I'd be remiss if I didn't mention the Charlotte Business Alliance, especially since they really set the pace for the state with the business community backing Medicaid expansion. And so they're included on that stakeholder alignment document as well. So I would just highlight a few things that are in common. As you see, the way it's done with the city and county document, which is a little bit the smaller, more colorful document. You see it broken out into our agenda items such as education, health and human services, community, and environment. And you'll see areas where those towns or the city have items in their legislative agenda that align or relate to items that we have in common. So health and human services, certainly you see Medicaid expansion kind of grows across the board with our municipal partners as well as our non-municipal stakeholders. I can pause now, Mr. Chairman, if you'd like to recognize another person coming into our meeting.
Please, thank you. Councilman Winston, would you like to introduce yourself?
Good afternoon, Braxton Winston, Mayor Pro Tem, City of Charlotte.
Thank you. Thank you for joining us today.
So you see many of the areas where there are certainly issues of alignment. Many times it pertains to the duties or the regulatory authority of those entities. So the city is not going to have as much with health and human services because they do more infrastructure. And then but there are crossover items. And so I won't go through this, but this is available and wanted to share this with you. If you all have any questions, I'm happy to follow up on any of those items. I want to thank my counterparts, especially Dana Fenton, for helping create some of the outline of the boxes and working on those together. We continue to work together as well as with the other stakeholders that you see listed. So our presentation today, I'm going to try and drive and talk. That'll be interesting. Oh, Commissioner Rodriguez McDowell has a question. You can't see her on the screen. She's waving her hand.
Hey, Commissioner Rodriguez McDowell.
Hey there, sorry about that. I just wanted to ask for a clarifying question about this document. It doesn't include Mint Hill and Pineville, and I was just wondering, is that because we don't have things that align or they don't have an agenda? Like how come they're not on here?
Great question, and I need to put that a little asterisk there. They did not have a formal legislative agenda passed. So they did not formalize or send us over a document. They participated. We had our legislative agenda breakfast and a lot of discussion. And prior to that event and leading and afterwards, I did ask each of our towns and the city if they had an approved, board approved agenda to share that with us for the document. So they may have items that come up, and if they do and share that with us, we'll follow up and create an opportunity to illustrate that on the chart. But as of right now, there's not a formally approved legislative agenda for those two towns.
Okay. Okay. Would you say that's fairly normal for them? Because I don't remember this coming up before.
I have, since I've been here in the 5 years that I've here, I have seen an increase in approved legislative agendas. So when I first started, I think there was maybe 1 or 2 of the towns. Of course, the city has had their legislative agenda, but so I've seen, I think with the increased engagement that we've had with our town counterparts, I'm seeing an increase in the setting of additional priorities by our neighboring counties, or towns, which is a good thing.
Thank you so much. Thanks. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Absolutely. Commissioner Meyer, you have anything? So I have one question, Starla. Is this something, these finalized versions, first off, I want to say thank you, because I think it really is important for us to show the alignment, and it's truly intergovernmental, which makes sense. Are we going to push these back out as shared documents with our partners and colleagues?
Yes, we can certainly push them
Okay.
out. I know there's been just among counterparts for quality checking and making sure I didn't
Right,
switch anything
right.
up. I've shared them at the staff level, but I wanted to, of course, share it with
Sure.
you all, with having made the request from the board before sending them out to our counterparts in the towns, which I can follow up and do after today's meeting.
Okay, fantastic.
I know we had this question earlier at a meeting. Can we add to our legislative agenda moving forward?
So that is the prerogative of the of the committee to make that recommendation to the
Okay.
board, and then for the board to make that decision.
Okay. All right, thanks.
Perfect.
Okay, so the presentation today, and we're gonna see if I can drive. It's still not going. Let's see. What am I not hitting, Carly? I knew better than to. I'm sharing. Okay, will it go now, you think? Okay, let's see. So I'll provide, we talked a little bit about the agenda, the stakeholder agendas, and I'll mainly today give a state agenda update. That's where quite a bit of action is happening. We've certainly, I'll end with the good news about our work. All of us have talked about the Ways and Means Committee hearing and how we're continuing to engage at the federal level, and then end with sharing some of the upcoming opportunities for legislative advocacy. So just as a place setter, just putting everyone back where we are, we have the 4 main buckets of our legislative agenda. As you see here, they're education, health and human services, community, environment. Of course, this goes along with our general guiding principles that we have, that the county and that the board has approved and reestablished each year. And so for the purpose of keeping that in mind, what I'll do is briefly show you the bucket or the agenda item under each, and then I'll talk a little bit about 3 to 5 bills that have been filed in those particular areas, especially ones that may align with things we passed. Under education, you'll see we have 3 main bullets under education: supporting funding for education that's not based on the economic development tier system, supporting funding related to the comprehensive remedial plan without supplanting or reducing existing funding measures. And the third item, support raising the income eligibility threshold and reimbursement rates for the NC pre-K program, basically to align with the wages, labor force demands. This was our kind of catch-all with supporting funding for early childhood development and providers. So what we've seen, there we go. To highlight a few of the education bills, you have 6 here before you. The first 3 were that was hitting it out of the ballpark. They literally mirror our agenda items and things that we're interested in. This was there was even a press conference and a press release about these bills. It's a bipartisan effort related to early child care. You'll see House Bill 342 extends the child care compensation grants. It actually allocates $300 million in non-recurring funding to continue those grants to support the child care provider industry. House Bill 343 increases the rates and sets a floor for the child care subsidy. Just want to send a shout out to Tim Gibbons in DSS. He has been a great stakeholder working with the provider industry and community on this. It sets up one of the main things, automatic increases. So when there are studies to show that the rate should increase, the legislation, which is actually a bill and in the budget, creates an automatic component to respond to those recommended increases, in addition to other things. And then, of course, it extends to child care compensation grants, House Bill 342. Senate Bill 432 extends the K-3 class size waiver. I know that's been an important issue over time. It's not on our agenda, but our CMS partners have made that an issue for them. And then you have House Bill 219, which we're watching. Commissioner Jarrell definitely flagged that for us as well. The CMS actually has a press release and information they've issued about House Bill 219, the Charter School Omnibus Bill. It basically adds categories of funding for charter schools. CMS's information says that could come at a cost of over $17 million for the CMS system. What it does on our end is that it authorizes, does not require, it authorizes counties to provide capital funding for charter schools. And so that's our particular direct connection. I will add that our delegation member, Representative Bradford, is a co-sponsor for this particular piece of legislation. In addition to these bills, the House Appropriation Bill, information you see here, there have been voucher bills. There's, of course, a school nurse bill that Dr. Washington mentioned to the board as we talked about our school nurse initiative. And so that aligns with our goals. And so there's been a lot of movement when it comes to our education bills, and many have been introduced. I brought, as I joked about having items. I don't think I have it in front of me. Literally, the calendars are pages long. So certainly today, there were more probably education bills and every bucket bill. I mean, they're pages long of bills that are being introduced every day. So what I try and do, and Lorianne and Rob, they are great at tracking those on Fridays. That's kind of when we do the catch-all of what's been introduced and does it seem like it's moving and who's sponsoring it and where we'll move forward. So I can pause for questions on education, or I can keep going.
I have one simple question. For the school nurse bill to pass, would that whole charter school omnibus bill have to pass? The school nurse bill
They're two
underneath.
separate bills. It's
Okay,
just
but
two
it's,
Thank you for that clarification. That last bullet is just kind of a catch-all. Just there have been so many bills related to those
sure.
issues.
Okay.
There have been multiple school voucher type bills. There have been different school nurse bills. So it's just a catch-all.
Okay,
And you'll
thank
see
you.
that on each slide. So thank you for saying that. So I'll pause now, Mr. Chair.
One second. Commissioner Rodriguez McDowell, did you have any, Councilwoman Molina just walked in, but before we switch the agenda, wanted to see if you had any questions with respect to education.
Yes, I do. Thank you so much. I just couldn't understand, Starla, when you said about the H219 charter school omnibus, did you say it was, it would have an effect of 70 million or 17 million?
17.
17 million, that would be the effect on
The
CMS.
estimated impact.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much.
that would be a pass through for us. We would have to,
Not necessarily, because
Okay.
it could be some of their instructional costs. That's just their estimated cost. And I can send the press release or the information on this bill from CMS is public, so I can send
Okay.
that around to the committee so you can see
Oh,
exactly
that'd
how.
be great.
that'd be great.
Yeah, that'd
Thank
be
you.
really.
Yeah. No,
Thank you,
you're
because
fine.
as we talk about capital, our CIP, like this is really important information. Thank you.
It is. That's a great point. Mayor Pro Tem, did you have anything you wanted to add? Questions? No, you're good. All right, cool. So Councilwoman Molina is here. We are going to switch the agenda up real quick, and we're going to move to our update on Eastland. So all of us on this committee serve on economic development as well. And so we heard an update from the staff perspective. So I really want to clarify that this update is really coming from the perspective of the community. And so I've asked Councilwoman Molina to be here, Mayor Pro Tem Winston to be here as well, so that they can add some commentary from the community perspective. We do have Todd DeLong in the room as well, which is great. And we have Deputy County Manager Leslie Johnson here that may be able to add some additional context if they deem appropriate. So please feel free to jump in. But right now, what I want to do is turn it over to Councilwoman Molina, allow Mayor Pro Tem Winston to add any comments or questions that he may want to add, and then I'll open up to my colleagues.
Thank you so much, Commissioner Jarrell. I am happy that You invited us to come. I love when we work together. I love it so much. I'm very excited about our partnership and the opportunity to work with you all. Eastland, as you all know, it's one of those projects that, and from a constituency perspective, I have to make sure that I'm clear in saying I hear our constituency. We have a lot of passionate people on the east side who serve us there, us and you all. They serve, our community and work with both of us. And so I hear them, I see them. A lot of what they're saying, a lot of the sentiment is fear, because they've come to a point in seeing so many options not really be realized. And we hear them, we see them, we're ready to take action. We're here as a united force to say we want what's best for East Charlotte. And so that's why we're here. That's why we're all here. And I'm excited to, have conversations and come up with solutions.
Fantastic. Mayor Pro Tem, do you want to add anything?
Yeah, I'll just tag along with Ms. Molina, who's the district rep. I think what's been clear from the community, which from when Eastland, the mall was shutting down or was in its kind of death row through today, that residents on the east side want that site to continue to be a destination. They want it to be a place that is active, is inviting, and gets people to spend time and spend dollars.
Absolutely.
In East Charlotte. And I think that sentiment is something that resonates throughout the area. I say the area, meaning the region, because Eastland is something special, not just to residents of the east side, but to people from all over Charlotte and from all over the region. It's a familiar place. It's a familiar destination. This was a place that, people would come from church bus trips from far away to come and come into Charlotte. So I think that's really where, the focus remains for us on the city side, is how can we do something there that makes sense, that makes East Charlotte a destination, and it's going to be something that will last, will have staying power. It's not something that's going to be a catalyst for a few years, but for several decades. And I think there are possibilities here. I know, again, people are getting frustrated because they want it to happen now. But I think people are also keeping that context in perspective of what it needs to be. We don't want to just do something for the sake of it. We want to do it to achieve those goals.
Thank you for that. Did you want to add anything else?
I agree. I couldn't add more.
Okay. No, that's fantastic. So I just want to go to my colleagues, and if you have any comments or questions, we'll start with Commissioner Meyer.
I guess, are we going to get an update on where we are now on the proposals? Is that what we're talking about? The three that we've spoken about before, or what?
Well, so we have another meeting on May the 1st, and I have Todd. Todd, if you can jump in if I'm missing anything. But at the Economic Development Committee, we're going to have another meeting on May the 1st. There's a prior deadline to that, where anyone who is interested, my understanding is that they will have submitted a proposal. And then as the as the committee, we can actually take a look at what's there to see if there's, the ability to make any decision at that point. That's the hope. Todd, you want to add anything or?
That's spot on. So at the last committee meeting, there was a request to extend for another 60 days. So what we've done is, rather than do a literal 60 days, it's just a little shy, just to match up with the timing of the city's Jobs and Economic Development Committee in May, which is May 1st. And we've asked those who would like to revise their proposals to submit the information to us by April 17th. And that gives us ample amount of time to review those revised proposals and have any kind of follow-up interaction we might need with those who submitted revised proposals. So that's kind of where we are now. And I suspect over the next couple of weeks, we'll be getting more information from folks. And right now, people are they're getting to work. They have the pencils down and they're revising proposals as applicable based on the commentary that they received from the committee and from council over the last, during the March meetings.
So it's just the 3 proposals still?
That's all we have so far.
Okay.
Commissioner Rodriguez McDowell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I guess so it doesn't really sound like there's any new information, but the thing that is new is it's really great to hear from both of our Councilwoman Molina and Mayor Pro Tem Winston that, that they're seeking to work together and that they, I really do feel a spirit of cooperation is really kind of come alive here. And so I'm really excited to see that. I'm happy to hear that. But I'm not hearing any new information at this point, right? We're just gonna keep kind of cruising here until we come up. I guess I'm trying to read into your words that there's nothing right now that you're ready to jump on and you're really waiting on something new. Is that accurate?
Well, what I would say as a committee member, I would say I'm open to what we see. I know we have 3 proposals that I've seen. I don't know what those revisions look like. I don't know if they would involve any acts from you guys. My hope is that if there is any involvement or participatory opportunity, I would really hope that you would be willing to partner with us. I feel like that we are a united front in providing a solution to our region, particularly in the Eastland area. And so I would, ask you graciously that if there is an opportunity, I would love for you to consider that as a body as well. I think together we would, if there is an opportunity, I don't know if there is or there isn't, but again, everywhere that we can work together to make this the best opportunity possible is what I'm interested in, if need be.
So just to be clear, the park is still part of the plan and the Crosland piece is still moving forward. And that's not in jeopardy as we wait on this other piece,
I
correct?
sure hope not.
See, I don't know if that's actually true. Well, I'll let you, I'm gonna let you jump in there.
I would say nothing is getting in the way of what Crossland is doing on the western side of the site. But what I would say the impact has is the timing. So we can't just sit here and wait for year after year after year until something goes down, because there is some infrastructure impacts that complement both sides of that property. So we'll have to make some decisions on the infrastructure improvements if there's not a concrete decision on an amateur sports concept or partner. So those are some things we're going to have to work through with our partners, both Crossland Southeast, the county, and everybody else, just to make sure what is the most appropriate course of action as we go forward. As of right now, it's really comes down to timing and certainty of what's happening on that side of the site. We're thankful for the partnership we have with Crossland, and we're progressing that in partnership with the county as well. And so we're continuing to see more and more improvements to be taking place on the site. So nothing at this point is derailing or conflicting with what's happening on the property right now.
Thank you. That's great to hear. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Liz, did you want to add anything? I just want to give you the opportunity.
No, I'm good.
Okay. Okay. So a couple things that I would like to add. Number one, I want to say thank you for everybody that, our colleagues that were able to be here. Thank you so much for your work as well. From a community perspective, I think there is a lot of anxiety in the community. I think it's important for our colleagues and our staff to understand how the community is feeling, where they're at right now. There's still this huge question mark and cloud, because everything seems shaky. It seems like the ground is shifting underneath the feet of folks, even though we approved in, through economic development, we approved the TIG. But solving to the other side of the site, I think, is still an extremely important piece. And I think Crossland would even say that that's really important. I think they have their eye on this. So just to say, just because we approved the TIG, it doesn't mean that everything has been solved to. And that's why the community has so much anxiety. One of the things that, again, from our perspective, just to know that to Mayor Pro Tem's point, having a destination location and a driver that's a economic development driver, any types of components around education, open space, environmental type of impact from a positive perspective is what the community really wants. But there is a lot of anxiety on the east side. And my goal in, partially, not only as a district rep, but as the chair of intergovernmental, is to make sure that we maintain a pulse of what is happening so that no one is blindsided and we continue to work together to keep all options open,
Yeah.
as you said, Councilwoman. And that is really the goal. And for you all as my colleagues to be completely vested in what's going on and understanding what the community and where they are.
But was the community completely in support of the Tepper plan, the soccer fields?
I would say so. What would you say? I think, the sentiment and the excitement around Tepper,
Okay.
Coming to the east side was one of those things that was like, we have this international corridor that really culminates
Right.
at that property. And
That's right.
so
That's
we
right.
have so, many people who love soccer, on the east side. And I know that they were excited. I mean, I feel out of line saying I'm speaking for everyone, but I would estimate that everyone was excited about that Tepper project,
Okay.
I think the real excitement was, again, this idea of a destination.
Yeah.
And the idea that the academy was going to go there.
Yeah.
And not, the headquarters was good and fun and exciting and practice fields, but the activation was really going to be that in that soccer academy and youth and
That's right.
18U and below level of soccer. So that, I think, was the real excitement and was the draw of why people, again, would see Eastland as a destination, why
Yeah.
people would be coming there from far and wide, and would
Yeah.
spur the idea of hotels and other types of business and eating and drinking establishments. And to Mr. Jarrell's point, I think that's part of the idea of the western part of the site, right? What is going to drive the business that's going to be going to those restaurants, those mixes of use. Sure, it's everybody around the community, but it's that kind of signature development that happens on our portion of it.
Yeah, because the other important part to understand is that, so Eastland should not be the end, right? So it shouldn't be our ending point. It should be the starting point.
Yeah, that's true.
For the driver of economic development. So what people were excited about with respect to Tepper, so you take a brand like that and you put it on that site, what does it mean to the outlying radius and the ring, right? It meant something that it could really be a catalyst for additional development, additional smart growth. And it also aligns right with one of you, and you guys correct me if I'm wrong, with the corridor of opportunity.
Absolutely.
That's
Mr.
right
Chairman.
there. So so everyone was excited. And so it's important to understand how the rug got pulled out from under everybody at that point when they pulled out. And then we did not have a ton of new submissions. And again, I don't want to get ahead of you guys, but I'm somebody looking from the outside in. There weren't a ton of new submissions to go through as far as options, and the community just has a lot
Absolutely.
Sorry, I got to run to our budget workshop.
Understood,
so
understood.
Thank you.
I'm coming. I'm coming.
So
Yeah.
I think that was really it. And I just appreciate you being here, Mayor Pro Tem, and for your leadership on this, and Councilwoman, of course, your leadership, and
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
and to, colleagues and staff, thank you guys for allowing us this space to get the community lens out there, because I do think that's important. We see a lot of presentations, we hear a lot, from staff with respect to this, and you guys are doing the heavy lift, but we've got to keep the community voice front and center.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yep.
And Mr. Chairman, if I may, I think you hit that nail on the head. I think, my sentiment, Commissioner Mayor, is, parallel to what my colleague here says. The pulse that I get often is the same pulse that he gets, because we serve the same community. And so a lot of the times I find myself, bouncing off the chairman to, if I have an opportunity to, speak with him, tell him what the sentiment is. And it's something that he's heard as well. And so I couldn't add or subtract from what he just said. I think, East Charlotte feels largely ignored. That's the sentiment that I hear resounding. And again, a regional driver that says, we care about the community is really what we're looking to, enforce here. So. Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you. Thank you
for
so much.
advocacy.
Yeah,
That's a view.
thank you. All right, now you got to
I
run.
do have to run. Thank you for having me.
All right. All right. Well, thank you for that, everybody. We're going to move back to the agenda item, and Starla, let you pick up. I know we finished up on education and moving to health and human services, I believe.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman. All right, managed to get. So Health and Human Services is our next area or bucket for our legislative agenda, as you'll see here, just as a recap. Medicaid expansion, of course, being at the top of the list of priorities. Support for funding and policies addressing housing security, access to affordable housing, specifically related to the Homestead Act thresholds and the impact of investor-owned properties. You heard in your last meeting from Representative Alexander and his legislation. So that's not on the list because it's not a new one, but we'll continue to track that one. Also supporting immigration policies, addressing the needs of our immigrant families, as well as strengthening our economy and workforce. Then the fourth item, support funding and policies addressing increased access to care, including primary and behavioral care, early childhood development, and federally qualified health centers. And then the last priority item, advocate for policies and additional resources that assist initiatives related to reducing community violence and increasing public safety, which is of course a big bucket. Those items are the listed priorities under that bucket. So when we look at legislation, and this could have been 5 pages alone of different things. And I'll do just a quick check-in here, just giving my usual PSA about the legislative process and the fact that dozens and dozens of bills are introduced. Of course, the likelihood of many of them, depending on whether or not the bill has bipartisan support or support of the current majority leadership, has a lot to do with whether or not it'll move forward. So certainly I did not put all the bills introduced here, but the first one you see is the one that across the state, across the country really, because there are many states, North Carolina was on that negative, that no list for Medicaid expansion. So even when we go to DC, they talk about, we were in DC, there were mentions of North Carolina embracing Medicaid expansion. And so we're pleased to see the passage of House Bill 76. It's been signed by the governor. The budget, I should say the House budget bill today did pass this morning and is on its way to the Senate for consideration. So they are right on time. They're ticking down. Actually, they're a couple of days early with getting that over to the Senate. So the passage of the budget will be the final component of Medicaid expansion. I do have a final slide that highlights some of the items in the budget. We'll cover that towards the end. Senate Bill 41, you'll see it's the guaranteed Second Amendment freedom and protections. It repealed, because it is session law now, it repealed the requirement to obtain a pistol purchase permit from the sheriff. And so certainly our sheriff and several around the state expressed concerns about this particular bill, but it not only passed, but it was vetoed, and the vetoed was overturned. The next bill I'm highlighting is House Bill 422. It's an interesting bill. It came to my attention through different alerts. Actually, I think Lorianne may have sent it to me first. Unfair Real Estate Agreements Act. This act would prohibit predatory real estate service agreements, where we're seeing, people just ending up in these contracts that requires them to only use a certain realtor should they sell their property and pay them a certain amount if they try and break the lease. It really is a predatory practice. A lot on our older homeowners as well. And so we're watching this one and certainly supporting it as it aligns with our agenda. House Bill 551, the landlord tenant and HOA changes. This bill was startling. That shouldn't be my narrative, but I am. It's startling to say the least. You all know me. I try and have this non-biased opinion. But
So this is overriding us.
yes, this bill, House Bill 551, prohibits counties and cities from basically adopting sources of income requirements. The bill, and I did bring a copy of that one with me. It does specifically, when I talked to Derek and some other folks about it, I want to just read the full title of this particular bill. It's an act to prohibit counties and cities from adopting certain ordinances, rules, and regulations that would prohibit landlords from refusing to rent to tenants because a tenant's lawful source of income to pay rent includes funding from a federal housing assistance program. To regulate support animals and service animals in residential tenancies, to expand authorized litigation costs and summary ejectment matters, to make clarifying changes to landlord-tenant law, and to adjust the applicability of homeowners associations declarations amendments to homeowners. So it also hits the HOA components where they say people have to live in a property for a year before renting it out. This bill is sponsored by our delegation member, Representative Bradford. So this is a bill that we are.
This is also, the city has to also. Okay.
This is not just us. There are a couple, I think Durham County was moving, like I've done calls with other municipalities that are interested in pursuing this as an ordinance or as a policy for their funding. So this is one that we will continue to watch. Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Rodriguez McDowell has her hand raised.
Oh, please chime in.
I mean, this is just mind blowing, but it didn't actually speak to county funds or municipal funds. It says, you know, that it prohibits us from adopting source of income requirements in general, but I mean, but are they allowed to do that when we're using just our funds? Like, we're not doing a blanket source of income requirement for all properties, but only for ones where, you know, where we were giving funding, right?
Correct. However, and that's where we have different councils, and I'm sending this to Tyrone, are looking at, and there've been some discussion about, you know, whether or not a component could be added to the bill to say, unless the funding is for a county program, you know, a municipal program designated to, you know, so we're looking into that. It's my understanding that this came from, it's my understanding that the stakeholders associated with the bill have expressed that their intent was not to overturn the specific type of policies in Mecklenburg and Durham. So
Does that pass the smell test? Okay.
Just sharing what I can disclose.
Okay.
That is my understanding. That was not the intent. So we, and again, it's been a fire hose this week with bills being introduced. And so in all fairness to Representative Bradford and the sponsors of any of these bills, many, I shouldn't say any of them, but many of the bills that have come out this week, we have not had a chance, and Lorianne can concur with this, we have not had a chance to follow up with the sponsors to express our concerns on quite a few of these, because there've just been so many bills, and we'll be doing that over the next, not this coming week because they are on recess for spring break, but we will be doing that when they return, because there are quite a few that are on our list that we have partners with. I do know, I will say, I think the Justice Center, Bill Rowe, was trying to reach Representative Bradford to express initial concerns this past week, but it's just been crazy. Bill Rowe, he's the attorney with the North Carolina Justice Center. Okay. So they've been the point person on a lot of these statewide issues, because it's not just Mecklenburg County. And sometimes it helps to have someone else being expressing those. And so just a few of the other bills that you see, Senate, and I reversed this. I gave the good news first. Senate Bill 53. I mentioned this in our last meeting, the hotel safety issue bill. That was the first bow across the bow at the governor's veto. This was vetoed last year. This is the bill that basically took away tenancy rights from individuals staying in tenancy type hotels for less than 90 days. This bill, you know, is session law. It has moved forward. So at the bottom, you'll see, and I'll make this different next time, Commissioner, as you said that, it's just the catch-all of some of the other bills we're tracking. Again, tons of health and human service items and funding measures, like for communicable diseases, for older adults, tons of funding measures in the House budget that are good programs, that are good funding provisions that are in the House Appropriations Bill. We've seen several juvenile justice bills. Sonia Harper has been right there on it with, if you saw, I think one of the news clips this week about revisions to the juvenile justice guidelines some of them initially were really rolling back a lot of the juvenile justice reform work that we've done to treat juveniles as juveniles and to recognize the differences in handling those crimes or those offenses versus adults, so that we can have an opportunity to offer some reform measures to juveniles committing crimes. There was a substantial bill, and Senator Mustafa Mohammed from our delegation really has tried to work in a bipartisan way with the sponsors of those bills to tweak them some. So just this week, I think 8 o'clock, the meeting was at 8:30 yesterday. He and Sonia were on the phone at 8 a.m., giving the last little bit of input before the 8:30 meeting. But you'll see there's still some concerns expressed by the ACLU and other stakeholders about access to juvenile information. They've taken away some of the privacy shields and provisions to keep those records sealed of juveniles, because sometimes they made the argument for whether it be for safety of the community or the juvenile. If they're missing, for example, there are certain records that have traditionally been sealed that are now going to be unsealed. So that's a measure still in contention that there was a lot of news about in the last 24 hours. But just want to let you know, we are watching those bills. Our Homestead Act issue, which is a part of our Health and Human Service priority, is still moving. There have been all types of bills introduced from exempting veterans to exempting public, just a lot. And we, our one area has been aligned with our aging in place, our senior citizens, to give them relief, and that is not statewide. So we know that the current threshold of, I think it's $34,000, is just not the same to have that spread across the whole state when we have some of our rural areas and some of our more urban areas. And so our attempt, or our message, has been to attach it to the average median income, because that does illustrate a bit of the differences and diversity of economics in our state and of our residents. And so we've kind of been tunnel vision with that, even though some have been well intended. But if we open it up, we will lose a lot of the support that we have from the County Commissioners Association, because they have fought that, and some of our other counties every single year. This year there's agreement on AMI. And so if we can but there have been probably easily 10 bills doing different things. The latest, and I will give you all this example as I flip to the next one, and it may come up in a timely manner for other discussions that you may have. Last week I had a call from NCACC, and the staff member said, "Starla, aren't you all just AMI? We've all agreed we're gonna look at AMI." Yes, she said, "Well, there's a member of leadership that wants to make exemption for anyone over the age of 65. This legislator is not from Mecklenburg County. He's not from anywhere near Mecklenburg County or Charlotte. But do you know what he held up as an example of why it should be anyone, it doesn't matter your economic, anywhere 65. He held up an article from the Charlotte Observer about rebound. Wow. And I just thought,
Wow.
So here's our agenda item that we have been pushing across the state for I've been here 5 years this March, and I think I've talked about this for 4 of the 5 years, and we're finally getting movement. So, and I'll be very clear, that would kill the bill. I mean, the bill would not move forward, any of them. And so this is the one that has a glimpse of hope. So there are conversations being held with Representative Carney and Representative Bradford, kind of have a dual bipartisan approach to this particular legislation. So I'll end on that example of I never know where it's going to come from. Wow. So our next bucket item is under community. Just really quick, this is where our orphan roads are. The other favorite subject used to be magistrates. So it's orphan roads, supporting funding and policies addressing residential orphan roads, policies and funding to advance digital inclusion and access to technology, support funding and policies related to workforce and increasing workforce development opportunities. And then the fourth one concerning supporting judicial branch funding using national court practices. So let's see what we have a few things highlighted here. Keeping my trend of starting with the good stuff.
Right.
House Bill 395 was heard on the same day as we were doing our final prep to DC for the Ways and Means Committee. So I did Raleigh and headed to DC. Happy to say Representative McGee did an amazing job as usual. explaining the need for House Bill 395, which basically provides flexibility in how we assess people, how people pay those assessments back if they have their orphan road addressed. That bill made it out of the local government committee. We'll go to finance and hopefully cross over and we'll talk about it in the Senate. You see some other items here, just kind of bouncing around this particular target. Safe firearm storage, tax exempt credit. There was a bill filed with that, aligning kind of with our safe communities agenda item. And then House Bill 457, Union and Mecklenburg County boundary has been my hot topic the last 24 to 48 hours. As you know, the boards of Union and Mecklenburg County have a signed resolution. I did not want you all to be startled, as I was when I returned back from DC, to see that the blank bill had been turned into a piece of legislation giving all the property to Union County.
Oh my gosh.
So it was an unintended, I think the legislators from Union County wanted to actually get something in writing and did not have the latest update. Literally the bill, because when bills go to bill filing and drafting, there are days in between when they send it and when it happens. And so I think when he sent that bill, our resolution hadn't passed yet. So he only knew that Union was concerned with it. And so Representative Belk we've been texting and emailing each other for the last 48 hours to try and get the bill fixed before it gets heard in committee. So Derek's hearing this firsthand because we haven't had a chance to, literally it's been happening the last 24 hours. I apologize for that. So we're working on that. Ken Joyner and I have been talking yesterday and today, and I think we're fine. It was not an intended practice on their part. I just didn't want anyone to be startled by that. So we're continuing to work on that bill. House Bill 491, the Still Creek bill. This is really just here as an example. There are quite a few bills that get filed that are local bills for funding our projects. And listening to the debate on the House bill, they were very consistent in saying they were not taking up many member or district specific projects for funding. And so this is just a place, so this is really an example to show you these are some of the bills that do get filed. And the Senate may take a totally different perspective about local bills or local projects. So we'll continue to follow this bill and other ones affecting Mecklenburg County. Good news, I'm ending on good news this time. On the House budget. You'll see here the House budget does include 4 additional assistant district attorneys for Mecklenburg County. We'll go from 58 to 62 if that's passed. And as you see, 7 additional magistrates from Mecklenburg County from, the 0.5, but 31.5 to 38.5 positions. And so those were certainly pleasant to see in the House budget. So those items fall under our community target. So our final target, environment. The first one is support local control over stormwater mitigation and repeal of state laws restricting guidelines on redevelopment projects. Just as some background, we did hear from the Catawba River Keepers and just some of our environmental stakeholders on this being a very specific change to stormwater guidelines that dealt with Mecklenburg County. And so we've been working with them, or they actually have been leading that effort. You'll see on the next page, they've been successful in having a bill filed. And then as you see here, we have the item related to our environmental action plan, and then transportation and transit as the third area. So our environment bills, Ryan Carter has been just on the ball. We've met a couple of times and talked about this. So the bill was filed, House Bill 511, to enhance urban stormwater management. I love the title. It doesn't say to fix what you all did to us 5 years ago, Bill, which is what it is. So he's been the subject matter person on this particular effort. It seems to have bipartisan support. Now, what happens to it when it gets to the Senate? With the members still there that changed the guidelines a few years ago, I'm not sure, but we're happy to actually see a bill filed that would allow us to be able to have more control over stormwater management. And there is an exclusion for like townhouses, and it's written kind of tightly, but I anticipate some of that still may change, but it is a success to at least have the bill filed. And we're continuing to watch other broad, you'll see there two pretty broad environmental bills. House Bill 28, the North Carolina Managing Environment Waste Act. It creates a fund for cities and counties that have recycling centers. So talk to Justin Smithberger. He's been a great resource for that bill. Senate Bill 428, the County Waste Management Assistance. That deals with the scrap tire fund. and creating additional funding for that. We have a couple of questions. There's some nuances, as there always is, with that bill to make sure there are not any unintended consequences for some of the additional retail and hauling components related to tire recycling. And then Senate Bill 341, the safety and emissions inspection modifications. This bill lifts the emissions inspections for every county in the state, with the exception of Mecklenburg County. And Leslie's looking up because you saw, I think you were on those emails, yes, about this. And there is, in the committee, they stated that it was because there needed, Mecklenburg County was still on the list because there needed to be a history of 5 years of meeting the safety guidelines. But I think staff is showing that's not necessarily the case. So we're gonna follow back up so we can understand why. My understanding is from staff, from our Louisa staff, is that the State Department does not actually endorse this change, of course. It's not a state bill. So, I listened to the hearing on this, and it's like, we've met these safety standards. We don't still need this. Vehicles now have different components in it to let you know. And meanwhile, it's costing our residents a lot of money, because how many of us, this is what they say, how many people have had that light come on in your car, and then, $800 later, which it doesn't really mean anything because it's an indicator light, you have the light turned off and you can pass your inspection. And so it's a constituent issue they're responding to, but the state is still concerned that the standard does not need to go away. Since Leslie's here, I wanted to see if you have any other input. And then so this slide just kind of gives some highlights from my new paperweight that's on my desk, the House budget bill. Just a few things. So if you all remember, there was an additional teacher supplement funding that was created with ARPA funding, and we were, many of the urban counties, they were excluded from this funding in a very crafty way, because it looked at some of the economics of property tax collections and all that to basically carve out the urban counties from being included. The bill also has a reduction in state and local revenue from multiple sales tax exemptions. So in addition, you may hear some of the comments about the House bill eliminating certain taxes, whether it's corporate taxes or individual taxes. There's also the component that affects local revenue that's included in those tax reductions. There is increased revenue reimbursement rates for subsidized childcare going along with the bills that were introduced. There's $50 million to support county DSS departments related to Medicaid expansion. Over $15 million to local health departments for communicable disease programs, which Bernard and I talked quite a bit about that. So we're happy to see that there. $5 million for kinship care. I'll pause here and say one of the things we heard about when we were in DC in the Ways and Means Committee is the importance of kinship care. And so if you are caring for a family member to keep them at home versus in an institution, but you can't receive the support because you are kin to that person rather than someone coming out externally, especially as it relates to foster care and adoption, possibly. There is funding recognizing the increased need for kinship care. Over $1 million for local recycling and waste reductions programs, really mirroring or aligning with the bills that I mentioned earlier under our environment target, as well as the vehicle emissions testing, that's also in the budget, and then the additional DAs and magistrates. So those are components in the House budget. I've already heard chatter that the Senate has problems with how much they're spending, and they believe that there could be reduced taxes instead of spending as much as the House did. So I think the gamemanship will continue once it gets over to the Senate. So I'll conclude with covering a few dates, upcoming dates. The House deadline is April 25th. The Senate deadline for filing bills is already passed. And so with filing, they're in bill drafting now. They'll eventually be filed. So pretty much whatever's cooking is already in the pot. And April 25th, we'll see what else is there. All bills have to cross over by May 4th. And if you remember, that simply means if it was introduced in the House, it must be passed by the House and sent to the Senate, and the same from the Senate to the House by May 4th. So we'll probably come in here looking like I stuck my finger in a socket on May 4th for our meeting. But and Lorian's probably shaking her head on virtually online. So that's our May 4th date. For us, we definitely want to have our assessments bill passed. I'll stop here and say too, one of the other bills introduced that really is hot off the press. I mean, it's dated yesterday. I think today is dated last night. Senator Sawyer is one of the main sponsors of another orphan road bill, by the way. I forgot to mention, I have this here to mention. It would prevent the new creation of orphan roads, basically by attaching a bond requirement that says if it's not brought up to standard by a certain date, then the bond will be used to bring the road up to, this again is on new developments, still not existing orphan roads, but on new. So we're happy to see that. That is hot off the press. We have the County Advocacy Day coming up, May 23rd through 24th. Planning on checking in with Lisa, but I'll do an informal check-in on you all to see who's planning on going. Anyone planning? You're going? You're going?
Mhm.
Are you raising your hand? Oh, there's her hands raised. Okay, so we have at least the three of you. Our IGR committee will check with the other commissioners. That is a new approach. They're doing the dinner the night beforehand. And then all the legislators are invited to the dinner. And then the next day they have little donuts and coffee, and then you go over to the legislature. So I'm presenting a couple of options for us to work through, whether we go early the first day and come back early the second day, or go later the first day and come back early the second day. And so we're working on those options moving forward. Interestingly enough, that's Commissioner Rodriguez now has her hand raised.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, I just wanted to let you know that I'm going to have to miss the dinner because I'm going to Omaha with Pat's Place, the child abuse prevention, child abuse folks. Going on a trip with them, and I won't be back until 5:30 on that Tuesday. So I'll just drive down after I get back and be there for the 24th.
Okay.
Just wanted to let you know.
Busy.
And is there a preference? Do you two have a preference for being driven or driving yourself? Any preference?
I mean, I don't mind driving.
I'm gonna drive.
I like to drive.
Yeah, I like to drive myself.
Yeah.
So.
I do too.
Again, this is good timing to ask questions. We're weighing all of our options,
Yeah,
so. And then the NACO annual conference is coming up. It will be in Travis County, Texas, from July 21st through July 24th. Commissioner Rodriguez McDowell is doing the hands up on the screen. So she's doing the hands up. So that is always a good opportunity.
She's a big fan of Travis County.
Okay, Travis
Well,
County.
it's Austin. Who's not?
So that she did the thumbs down. So I'm translating for her.
We
that'll-
can't see you, Susan. That's the
Yes.
problem.
And that'll be a good opportunity for us to work on we'll probably have a couple of resolutions. And as you know, we get to give input overall on the platform for NACO and a lot of good subject matter information. And then August 24th through 26th, that is the North Carolina Association of County Commissioners Annual Conference, which will be held in Wake County. So additional information will come from there. So I think that is my last slide. So I'll make sure you all can see Commissioner Rodriguez McDowell there.
There we go. Now we can
Live
see.
and in person. Now you can see her.
All right. Commissioner Rodriguez McDowell, do you have any questions or comments?
No, I think, it's just really amazing to hear how we get carved in and out of things, Mecklenburg County, on the state level, just with all of the news lately.
Yeah.
That's just really disheartening in some ways, but yeah, no, thank you for your work, Starla. Thank you for following all of these developments. It's so good. I feel such a sense of confidence knowing that you're not missing anything, and that you're following it all and bringing us the important pieces that we need to know about. So I really do appreciate your work there. So thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Meyer.
I do have one, thank you. When there are multiple bills, and I can't remember, you were mentioning one earlier when we were talking about Health and Human Services, when there are multiple bills filed, do they eventually get combined and collaborated on and come up with one?
Sometimes it really does depend. If there are the term we often use is poison pills, if they're what could be seen, deal breakers in some of
Okay.
them, then those are probably off the table. It could be a brand new idea. One of the examples is the Homestead Exemption
Right.
Act, where it's veterans, it's people over 65, it's everyone at a certain, and so it depends on who the stakeholders are and who the
Mhm.
sponsors are.
Okay.
And if there's already been preliminary agreement and collaboration, then that can happen. Some components get pulled out or
Mhm.
not. It does just depend.
Okay. Okay.
Did I leave out, Lorianne, do you want to add anything to that?
I think you've covered it well. Thank you, Star.
Susan has something.
Commissioner Rodriguez McDowell.
Yeah, I'm really glad you asked that, Laura, because I was thinking, I didn't understand that part, Starla, about the bill that is 65 and over. Can you just go back to, is he talking about creating a homestead exemption for everyone over 65?
Yes, that's his desire.
Can you?
And so that means we wouldn't collect tax, it doesn't matter your income, you would get the exemption.
Based on age, right?
Based on age,
Yeah.
yes. That bill, you
Based
can't
on
find
age and
it
not
because it
income.
wasn't look, it wasn't filed. But that was the goal of that particular legislator. So we have stakeholders that have been chatting with him about the need to really look at AMI because there are so many differences. And he's like, well, the one thing that's across the board is if you're 65, but that would probably create the impact on budgets, on finances across the state of all the,
Yeah,
that would
absolutely.
be more than this. But that is an example of one subject item, but two different approaches, and one that's hopefully not going to move forward, and one that we do want to move forward. So that one won't be combined, but that's an example.
Can I ask a question kind of on the subject?
Please.
I do have a question. So in our last board meeting, just this past Tuesday, we discussed tax, the valuing of commercial properties, specifically golf courses. I don't think it can go on our legislative bill. This, bills are already being filed, all that stuff, but how can you help us communicate? Because according to George and Dina and Ken, it's a state issue. How can we create a change or at least get a conversation going with the state?
So would the conversation be about the differences or the impact currently on statutes? Because that is it just depends on which direction the board is taking, because for additional clarification, the Department of Revenue is always a regulatory source to start with for just expressing your concerns or expressing ideas about the current.
Well, I think I don't think we quite understand if it's actually a state statute, the way they value, say, a golf course. Is that a state statute, or is that just something we've been doing since 1971? Like, I didn't even know who to talk to about that.
So it wasn't at the board meeting.
Yeah,
I was
I know. I didn't know if
listening, but I was
okay.
listening. I was listening, and I know there were a lot of questions and probably some additional clarification that Ken and his consultant and as appropriate, the county attorney, that they're looking into. And I think after that.
Are they looking into it?
I didn't get that
I don't think I got
sense
that
that
either.
they were looking into it necessarily, but I mean, I think and I don't want to put words in your mouth, but one of the places where there was a rub is, does the statute call for us to use the income approach?
Right.
If I'm not mistaken.
Where does that come from?
Does it call for us
Income
to use
versus
the
cost
income
approach or whatever, right?
Mhm.
Where does that come from? And it was never, I don't think anyone ever said it.
Mhm. No, that's a great question, Commissioner. I think we probably need to dive into that a little bit deeper, because I think there was some confusion about exactly understanding whether it was actually a statute that says you have to do it this way, or whether there's any flexibility provided in terms of what decisions are made
Right.
locally. So I think we should probably clarify that first
Okay.
before assessing whether a legislative change needs to be made at the state level to
Yeah.
change anything.
And Derek, I think if you go back and listen to the tape, I think what I heard Ken say was the consultant felt like this was the best approach.
Right, but we never understood. I don't think any of us understood why he thought it was the best approach.
Hmm.
It was never answered.
Right.
I mean, maybe I'd have to listen to it again. Susan, I don't know if you remember a why.
Well, I think the why was because if you look at whether the land can be sold as real estate for other purposes or not, was kind of the thing there, if I'm not mistaken. because it's used as a golf course, it has a different value than if it was being used as residential real estate. And so that's why they needed to go off the income. But I thought Commissioner Jarrell's point about the dirt is the dirt. And if, you know, if the dirt under a McMansion and a dirt under a home that hasn't been improved in 30 years, you know, like that part didn't really resonate. You know, how does, if the dirt's the dirt, matter if it's for a golf course or residential, isn't it being valued, you know, not by income, but by where it is? Is that,
Yeah, I mean.
did you guys feel confused by that too?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
Absolutely.
you think about it. You put 20, if we put 20 homes on Quail Hollow tomorrow, if we put 20 homes, what would the value of those combined value
Right.
of those properties be, right? You're not gonna tell me that it would be, they would have declined in value
Right.
over a year, but nonetheless.
There's just
Well,
confusion. And
and-
I don't know where to begin. I figured I'd start.
I was
with
looking
Starla.
at, I was looking
Put it on
at the,
Starla.
Well,
Starla,
I
go
thought maybe
figure
she
it
would know.
out.
I thought at least you could advise me.
What were you saying,
I was looking at our CIP notebook, you know, trying to prepare for Tuesday's meeting.
Yeah.
And I noticed on there was a $25 million improvement for a golf course, for our Harry Jones golf course. And I'm just saying, just to improve the golf course is $25 million. Like, that's more than the Quail Hollow golf course costs right now if you wanted to buy it, right?
9 million. Coral Hollow's like
Yeah.
9 million.
And
But-
it's
but in our
such a crappy course,
CIP
too.
Oh, yes, yes, an
Nobody
average
wants
course.
to play that course.
And our CIP is saying
This is messed
25
up,
million for that one in the park and rec budget.
But
So
all- It is true. And all we heard was, well, state issue, got to go to the state, got to go to the state. Well, that's a very broad statement. And I wouldn't know.
So why
What to
don't we
do.
hone it in on what our ask is here? Because we're
Yeah.
kind of just venting right now.
Yeah.
What's your ask?
Me?
Yeah.
Well, I don't know who you're asking.
You're the one that teed it up, so.
I did tee it up. I'm asking what would be a step I would take. I mean, I'm not asking you to, I mean, what would we do when we're told it's state issue? We can't talk about it here. And so, so what do we do? I'm clueless on what the steps would
I
be.
think
Call
one
my
place to start is if the intent of the briefing with Ken was to explain the process and state requirements.
Yes.
It seems like that it's not 100% clear, even with that briefing, that there's clarity about what is a state rule versus what is any type of flexibility here locally. So at a minimum, I think maybe I can go back and at least express that there's still some uncertainty and determine whether there's other ways to clarify this, whether it's additional written information or another brief, discussion may help. And I think from there, we can then maybe make a better determination if we do think it is a state law. And if so, we can determine what are the priorities to change that if that's the case. But luckily, I think we have time, given that we're already in this cycle. It wouldn't affect this cycle. We'd be talking about a future.
Right.
Since that's so far down the line, I think we have some time to build out a thoughtful approach if we want to take that route.
Okay. Thank you.
Sure.
All right, that's perfect. Commissioner Rodriguez McDowell, did you have anything else?
well, I mean, if we just want to.
I guess I didn't ask that right.
Yeah, nothing relevant, I guess.
Okay.
Thank
I know when you said you opened that CIP book,
Yeah, I've been spending some time studying that today, and I'm trying to understand, basically, why would we do 25 million to a golf course when it's not even worth that, when it's the fanciest one that pros come to? Like, I just don't get it. So anyway,
that's a great point. So thank you for that. Starla, thanks again for your work, the presentation. A couple of things that I did want to point out. I think it would be helpful for us to understand, as a board, what's the impact of the supermajority that we think will be on our legislative agenda. I think that is an important component for us to understand what that means to count large urban counties, but specifically us. And again, not to solve to it now, but for us to think through that and maybe be able to identify to our colleagues what are some items that are probably DOA or I don't want to say DOA, that's not fair, but that are going to make it much more difficult for us to gain any traction so that we are setting the right level of expectation. Because colleagues, I do think it's important for us to get ahead of it with the community to say, yes, we teed these things up, we heard you, but understand there's a super majority out here that they're not going to be feeling warm and fuzzy over some of these items, right? So that was one thing that I want us to consider as a committee. And again, just for you guys, I'm not saying that only if you guys agreed that makes sense for us to even look at it that way. Gotcha. Perfect. The other thing is when we look at that source of income discrimination bill, I would really like not only for us to keep an eye on that, but to get a better understanding of the impact to what our ordinance is once Tyrone has time to go through it. But I think, again, making sure that the entire board really knows that that's out there and we put an ordinance in place and that could potentially impact Medicaid expansion, understanding what that means if the budget is not approved, for everybody to get clarification. Although you did say we're looking good, but I think just making sure that people understand what that means, because we were kind of rah-rah around Medicaid expansion, but it's not a done deal. Correct me if I'm wrong.
It's not, but I will say with a veto-proof majority, we'll have a budget passed, which
Okay.
will include. Medicaid
Okay.
expansion.
Thank you.
I don't do many crystal ball predictions, but I'll do that one.
Perfect. The other thing is, I know we had some disagreement on the teacher supplement piece, but again, I think keeping an eye on that is really important.
The one,
The teacher supplement
so
one?
then that was in our priorities, right?
No,
Yeah, I thought it was.
the teacher supplement, that's not in
It's
our
not,
priorities.
I
That
thought
was
it was-
just,
It's just kind of
we
an
had,
FYI.
you remember, so I sent that email that time about that because we were
The tier
excluded.
system. The tier system. Is that two different things?
It's two different things.
Yeah,
Oh,
the
okay.
teacher
I'm sorry.
supplement was the one where, do you guys remember the discussion where we don't get the same level of funding
Yeah.
as other people across the state to apply towards the teacher supplement? So I still think that's something that I'd still like to track, obviously, since the bill is there and seeing what that potentially means. And then the last thing was from the environment piece, just keeping up with Catawba River Keepers and what they have going on is important. So those were the items that I wanted to just lay out and just say thank you, because this was really, really helpful for us to understand. And then the alignment of the documents is fantastic. Yeah, that's
Thank you.
true intergovernmental. So
Yeah.
thank you.
That is the first time I'm aware that we've ever done a document like that. So I
It's
want to
super
thank you
cool.
guys for giving the direction to look at this holistically, and also to thank Starla for
Yeah.
her personal hard work in creating.
That's right. That's right.
It's like
think that's
something to
big.
save and keep referring to. So,
Yeah, no, I
awesome.
think that's huge. So yes, thank you. Thank you both, and to my committee members. Any other thoughts from anybody? Lorianne, do you have anything that we might have missed today?
No, I think you all have done a great job. It's been a great meeting and I've enjoyed listening in. Thank you.
All right, thank you for your work. Jamelia, I see you on. Did you have anything?
I did not, but it was great listening in today.
All right, anybody else? Anybody? No? All right. Well, with that said, I want to thank everybody and we'll call the meeting adjourned. Have a great day, everybody. Get
Thank
10 minutes
you.
back.
Thank you, thank you.
Bye, guys.
Bye, Susan.